So we have a quorum, so I'll call a meeting to order and we'll start. And I got to restructure my thing. Minutes obviously is not under old business, but that's okay. Rick sent around the minutes. Any comments on the minutes that got sent around?
I got two typos on Tim Coquin's name from Mark. Everybody else said they look good.
Okay. Motion to accept the minutes.
So moved.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Sounds good. No dissents, so we'll take that as unanimous. Treasurer's report. Susan, you got anything on our financial stuff?
The numbers are there in the minutes, and the only thing to discuss would be if we go ahead with this kiosk, where we would take the funds from. And as far as I can glean, the process is a reimbursement process, unless there's something new that I don't know about. So I think the number was somewhere around $90, Mark, at some point, I remember, for the purchase of the kiosk map.
Let's cover that.
Okay, all right.
But
anyway, the only thing we need to talk about is where do we get, which one do we take the money from?
Yeah, we'll talk about that when we get to allocating funds. So what was the, so we're all set with the financial status as was reported in the minutes then. The map and kiosk, that was old business with some updates that got sent around by Mark that I saw all kinds of accolades about. So Mark, you want to take the lead on talking about the kiosk map?
Yeah, I think I got positive feedback from, I think, everybody. I guess the decision at this point is whether we want to pull the trigger and go ahead and print it. As Susan indicated, the cheap end, the reasonable option is $90 that I had proposed. If we're all in agreement with that, I mean, if anybody has any other changes they want to make, speak now or forever hold your peace. But if we're all in agreement, then we just need to take a vote on doing the expenditure and which account.
I'll take it from here, Mark. My comments in the scenario that's on the table was a lower expensive version of the photograph, graphics, whatever. And that was, what was the material, Mark?
That's 2mm dye bond, which is a sandwich of aluminum, thin aluminum sheets with a polyethylene core.
And an approximate life of?
Physically, it should hold up forever on the kiosk. The main limiting factor will be sun fade sitting there on the Mount Jeff kiosk, and it should go a couple of years, no problem.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, there's a big difference between infinite and a couple of years. So your couple of years is what I had anticipated. So that sounded like a good thing. So that sounds like a great thing, and also the price is very
reasonable. Yeah.
Very affordable from my perspective. So anybody else got any comments on that?
I liked it.
Then I would entertain a motion from someone to proceed with Mark's, let's just call it as a $90 option. And so if someone wants to put that on the table, we'll get a second. And I guess we could have a little more discussion before that, now that I'm thinking about it. Funding, let's talk a little bit about funding, and then we can include that as part of the motion.
Well, as you know, we have 3 different accounts. The rider account is specifically and only for Mount Jefferson projects. So that's a plus for that. There's relatively a lot of money in the rider account. That's a plus. We do not have to get permission for anyone to use the rider money. The negative on the rider is that we're supposed to replace those funds. So How we do that, I don't know. The Hubbardston Preservation, my manager just adjusted my screen.
Is that what you call them? That's
Well-
only in public, probably.
Well, no, for show business, yes. Yeah. So anyway, for the Hubbardston Preservation, we do have a lot of money in there and we don't have to ask permission. No, which one do we have to? Oh, we do have to get permission. That's the one that we have to ask a mother, may I? And the expense account, we don't have to get permission and it's a small amount, but so is the account. 90 bucks isn't much, but it's like 20% of almost 500. So any leanings to, those are the pluses and minuses I can see. I mean, we have lots of ways to get it done. And that, oh, go ahead. And that's assuming somebody fronts it. Because as far as I know, it's a reimbursement gig, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow,
Okay.
that's my understanding as well. And,
I haven't seen anything to the contrary go on. I mean, different. So,
Yeah.
okay.
What
Any
the-
other-
What's the total in the, approximate total in the Hubbardston Preservation? I don't have that right in front of me. 6K, somewhere around,
6651.
what was it?
6651.
Sounds great.
And it's comparable in the rider account. It's like around $6,000.
Yeah, it's 5,700.
Any comment? I have a couple suggestions here. And the other account is roughly in the 500.
477.
What's that?
477 is
Yeah.
the
Roughly $500.
expense account.
I'll give my dibs, and then other people can chime in. Since the right account is reimbursable, we don't need anybody to do it, so it might be a little bit faster pulling the trigger on it.
Right.
But you do have to reimburse it, which means you'd have to go and just ask Sanda for some money out of that account.
Let me back up there, Bob.
Yep.
As far as I know, there's nothing about the rider account structure that requires it to be a revolving account that is reimbursed. It's just kind of a convention.
That's good to know.
Yeah, Jassy said that was something they decided to do long ago, that whenever they took money out, they'd reimburse it, but there's no requirement in the fund that I
Okay.
know of.
All right.
We don't-
that's good to know.
We don't need to ask Sanda for that. Am I right? I believe.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, I'll restrict my, reverse my suggestion. I was gonna suggest that we just go directly to the Hubbardston Preservation, because otherwise we'd have to go to the Hubbardston Preservation anyway, and then put the money back in. But since this is a relatively small amount of money, it will not make any significant reduction in the rider account.
And it's for Mount Jeff. I mean,
Yeah,
we can
and I
only
would
use.
just- My suggestion, if somebody wants to so move, would be just to use the rider account, period.
So I move that we purchase the $90 die bond map for the Mount Jeff kiosk, taking the funds out of the rider account.
Do I hear a second to that motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Aye. Any,
Yes.
Yeah.
let's, and also, let me just, it'll be easier and more official, then we won't have to do a roll call. Are there any dissents? Hearing none, then the motion proceeds unanimously by all attendees at the meeting.
Nice procedure, Bob.
Hey,
Except is somebody on this committee gonna front the 90 or as
Yeah,
treasurer?
I'll front it. No problem.
Okay, you're okay with that? And then we'll just present that when it's, what's the time frame on that, Mark, approximately? Do you have any idea?
Like a week.
Really? So it's a quick turnaround?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean-
okay.
here's just a logistics question. Who has access to that? How do you get money out? I know we can do it on ourselves, but how do we access it?
Access what?
The rider account.
Well, through the town. I mean, but we have to present an invoice, as I understand it. And we, correct?
Right.
Okay, so the invoice just goes directly to the treasurer, I would guess. and then, or the financial accountant, and then she just writes a check.
Right, to reimburse. Mark volunteered, if I understand, to front that,
Absolutely.
correct? Okay,
All right, that sounds fantastic.
and
Just-
it's good. Go ahead.
Just to finish that off, so I'll go ahead and order it. When it comes in, I'll deliver it to you, Rick, and just leave it at your discretion to mount it as part of the kiosk rehab that you've been thinking about anyway.
Yeah, I've been kind of waiting to paint that until we figured out what the map was going to be, because if I'm going to paint it, I might as well paint that ugly brown background over too. So,
Any other discussion on the kiosk?
Just, it's fabulous to have a tangible, new, bright, wonderful, informative thing there, because what's there is just confusing. It looks like we don't care. I mean, it's been there a while and it's served its purpose. I'm not putting it down, but the new one is going to be really exciting. So thank you, Mark.
Yeah, you are, but that's okay.
The existing one's kind of a nice piece of abstract art at this point.
What was that,
couldn't-
Mark?
The existing kiosk is kind of a nice piece of abstract art.
Yes.
All right, let's see. Any other discussion on the kiosk stuff?
no, hey, Mark, just thank you very much for all your work. on
Yes.
this. It's gonna be-
Bravo.
Fantastic. Let's go to Canesto Bridge. I guess I'm ready to talk about that. Here's my take on it. I have been down there in the last month, and there's 5 telephone poles that are in perfect condition underneath that. At this point in time, relative to the surface, for those that have not been down there, earlier there were just holes near the edge where there was ground contact, etc. Now there are substantial holes there. So something needs to be done. Otherwise, we need to physically block it off, which probably should have been done anyway, because it is potentially dangerous. In fact, it was dangerous to a group that I had down there. We had a pony, for people that want a little humor in this. We took a ride, went across the Canesto via water instead of the bridge, but we had a young rider on a pony. We got across the other side, and the pony says, "I'm not going any further. I'm going home, and I'm using the bridge." So the pony just booked it across the bridge, and because the rider wasn't good enough to really control the animal, but the pony missed the hole, fortunately, and nothing serious happened. But if it stepped in that hole, something serious could really have happened. All right, back to the bridge. And I've got a few pictures here. Let's see if I can get those up. Here's my take on the scenario. You can take all the decking off and replace it with it's 3-inch decking. You could, if you want to do something similar and just to sound from a wooden decking viewpoint, you could double up instead of trying to search and find 2 or 3-inch rough cut pressure treated, which you could probably find somewhere. You could just double up on regular pressure treated. That would probably cost in the area of, with the hardware is not trivial when you do that kind of stuff. Approximately $5 a square foot. The next thing, and I'll call up a picture, is getting into some synthetic material area. Can people see that?
Not yet.
Oh,
So at any rate, that's something called a Geoterra panel that is made by Presto Geo. Presto Geo, they make a lot of synthetic products. You can drive excavators over that. Let me back up a little bit. The scenario with the double pressure treated is to take off the existing decking, get out the hardware, which was big nails. That's how that was fastened in, and put new decking on. So there's a substantial amount of labor associated with that. There's two approaches that don't entail that kind of labor. You could put these panels right straight on top of what is there, and they interlock. It looks like an erector set type thing with these type screws, and they have another GeoTerra panel, and you literally can drive excavators over these things. They're extremely rugged. A drawback on this stuff, this gets up into about $9 a square foot. And then the third option would be, go to another page, and if I could explode that, because it doesn't show up very well. Let's see if I can.
What's the square footage on the bridge?
Square footage on the bridge is 128 square feet. And so dollarizing it times 5, that's 5, 6, 7, roughly. Hello, dog. Roughly 650 for a pressure treated approach. For this panel approach that I just showed, that it's would be, that's around $8 to $9 a square foot. Let me get my calculator. I should have had that. So
1,300.
there you go. So that's roughly 1,300. And then the last approach would be roughly in the 1,500 range. Let's see, $8 a square foot. Yeah, 13. Is to use something called a fiberglass reinforced panel. And that's the simplest to install. And the picture that I've shown, let me see if I could explode that.
We can't see it anyway, Bob.
You cannot see that anyway.
So we've still got the Word document up.
Because Zoom should be sharing my screen, I thought. Oh, but maybe I had to pick a document? I clicked on Zoom. How do I get my Zoom screen back? So you're still in the Word document?
Yeah, on the agenda.
Oh, let's see, it's up the top of the screen. I get some new share. There we go. So I have to, it doesn't just share my screen dynamically. Yeah. How's that?
Now we got it.
Okay, let me go back up. All right, that's the first panel. These would be, those are roughly 40 inches by 1.5 feet. They're in metric, so it's a meter by a half a meter.
Is that the GeoTerra?
That's the GeoTerra panel. And what I would do is just put pea stone or something in to fill the voids. The next item, and a lot of people make these, and it's, let's see if I can blow up this section here. There's something called FRP, fiberglass reinforced plastic grates. They're ultraviolet protective. They have essentially an infinite life. And there's a couple different versions of these, or lots of different versions of these. They come in widths that are typically 2 feet. So for what we're doing, you could get ones that are 2 feet wide by the width of the bridge. So you could buy a 14-foot piece, cut it in half, and just lay those across, right straight on top of the existing material. But the drawback, so these are by far the simplest to install. You would fasten it at the edges of these, and there are fastening devices that would just catch it at either end of the panel. So you would install 8 of these going across the panel. They're light, easy to get down there. So you could literally have a usable safe bridge in 2 hours, 3 hours, something like that.
Is that actually the surface that
That's one of the surface. There's a whole variety of different types of openings, from little square grids, etc. So the openings can vary a little bit. So we would fine tune that. The problem, the cost difference is this gets up into about the $1,500 range.
Yeah, but if it's only a $200 difference from the other, and it's so much easier and quicker, and the longevity, how about the longevity?
The longevity of this is essentially infinite. That's ridiculous to say something's infinite, but it's extremely strong material. It's not affected by mold, rot, ultraviolet, anything. Relative to these pictures, these things get used for a lot of significant state projects, state forest projects, because especially where they're in remote locations, because the materials can literally be carried in by human beings. The material is light enough. And there are some that have gone into some, Steph and I have been looking at these for a while, that have got like 60-foot spans that are going over a river 60, 80 foot in the air in some state forests in Colorado, etc. And the beauty of it, the drawback is a little bit, not a little bit, notable in cost. The pluses are its life and its simplicity of getting it to the site, and its simplicity of installation. Particularly in this case where we've got the substructure. So you could just put these, they would cover the entire width of the bridge, and then you just concatenate them right going across the bridge. So
How do you fasten them down, Bob?
There's a variety of different fastening techniques. You could just at either end. They do not need to be, as opposed to, let me go back up, as opposed to these would get interlocked. There's 2 different types of this. This shows the easiest one, and it's removable should you ever want to do that. This heavy duty, all of this material here is made out of high density polyethylene. And this particular panel typically gets used as a replaceable thing at a big construction site where it's really wet and marshy or something, and they lay these down, interlock them, but then they can pull them back up at the end. Its cousin, which looks identical to that, except there's a metal clip in it. They've used these up in Alaska, and if anybody wants info on that, I can get them the websites and stuff like that. To go right straight across the tundra, they did absolutely nothing except connect all these panels and just keep building them as they went across a marshy tundra. And the only support was the tundra, and then they could drive small vehicles, 4-wheelers and other types of vehicles across the tundra. They made something that was 8 to 10 feet wide and about, I don't know, a mile long to get across.
So that looks like it's bolted down somehow. The picture you're showing us.
Yeah, you would bolt this. You would interlock it with these giant plastic screws. The other method of tying them together from panel to panel to panel, there's a metal locking clip that comes up from the bottom, and there's a tool that just twists it to. So you'd put 2 panels right side by side, put this in, and then twist it. And I've looked at that in detail, and that works okay too. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. And that
So-
other one is a little bit cheaper.
So what fastens them to the structure?
You would just take these, you wouldn't need to do any repetitive fastening as you would with the pressure treated materials where you'd put, two big GRKs or timber locks down through the double thickness and into the telephone poles. You would just lay this on across like a blanket and then just fasten it so they're in a few spots just so it didn't move. So you would take a lag and go through one of these openings down into the telephone pole just to prevent the movement of the material.
Okay.
So Bob, it looked like the FRP panels don't require additional backfill of P-stone. Is that
That is correct. And that's not to say that could not be the case depending upon what you used. The FRP panels, just like what you see here, you can buy those in a configuration that have like a half-inch opening, and then you would not need any P-stone to put in there because it does not have the voids that does.
Yeah.
So
And
that
that-
would be an additional cost. So you might be up at the other cost. Go with the simpler, quicker. Why not?
Well, my inclination, there's no question in my mind that the FRP panels,
Me too, just from,
Or-
unless they're slippery.
Well,
Why does it look slippery?
so
to me?
you're in the $1,500 range,
Yeah,
and you're done, literally, you would have a safe bridge in roughly 2 hours.
And those are rated for heavy traffic as well.
Yes. Yep, they have. I've gone, because I've been looking at this for simplicity of doing bridges in remote places. And so I've got all the tables relative to what you're going to put on it for traffic spans, et cetera, et cetera. And
Yeah.
so that $1,500, you can get them in smaller dimensions, if you would. It's essentially like a I-beam type math, if you want to get into that. And so the structure that we would need would be roughly 2 inches thick. You can buy them 1 inch thick, et cetera. For the traffic that we're going to put on that, you need something that was roughly 1.5 inches to 2 inches thick.
Yeah, I haven't had the discussion yet, but I'm kind of expecting it to be an issue with Joelle. That she may want to run skidders across that thing. And it sounds like it would be okay.
Well, skidders of that size, yes, the answer to that would be yes. What I would do if somebody's going to depends on what's on the skidder. If they're going to put the skidder across there with those giant chains that they put on skidders, first of all, a lot of skidders I've seen would be marginal width-wise to get across there.
Yeah,
But
that's
the
true.
only thing I would do, if they're going to have a skidder with those kinds of chains on it, I would want to put a little padding on it first before I did that.
Yeah.
How
Well,
slick,
we'll see if that comes up during our discussions.
how slick is the surface there? What's the coefficient of friction on it, Bob?
They have a type that has, these are intended for walkways, so you can buy that with essentially a sand finish.
Oh,
It's got a grit on it.
oh, okay.
great. I see one picture there that says optional brown color.
Well, you can get these in most any color you want, brown, green, pink, whatever.
Oh, hot pink, definitely.
Cool. All right.
So I can, here's a start. If people agree with my inclination, because I just love the simplicity of doing this stuff and not ripping up what's there and putting this down in literally a few hours and easy to get the material in and have a safe surface. I will do more detail and get you the specific item that I would recommend with the surface, et cetera, et cetera. How's that?
Sounds good.
Yeah, I think that's the way to go, Bob. And I guess we're going to have to present this to DCR anyway, so they're going to want the detail too.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. All right, so I'll do a little detailed PowerPoint on this, showing the material, and then just how you fasten them down into the subsurface, et cetera.
But in the go ahead. In the meantime, shouldn't we be sure that somebody, maybe Rick and I, do we want to take on another project to block that off before somebody does get hurt?
As a minimum, you could do it just as a simplistic thing. I know last year, I think it was, somebody put yellow caution tape there. Now that's pretty crude, but 2 boards fastened into the railing might be sufficient at this point in time.
Do we have to get permission to do that?
I would say not. But what do you think, Mark?
I don't know.
It's better than somebody
my answer is I
dying.
would hope not, if you might potentially save somebody from a broken leg. But, who knows?
Yeah, DCR gets a little sensitive about doing things like posting caution signs and
I
things
thought
like
this was state forest, Mark. This is state forest.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Absolutely state forest.
Yes, but it's DCR.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Anyway, they get a little sensitive about putting up warnings
Because,
Why?
because they consider that an admission of liability.
Oh,
well, isn't it better? Well, all right. So what if we ask them, how would they like this to be blocked off so that someone doesn't die?
Yeah, no, let's ask them. I mean,
Yeah.
Bob and I have been talking, and I've been talking to Tim Culkeen, and we're trying to set up a meeting.
Okay. You don't want to ruffle feathers. I get that.
we almost had one.
But we talked about this last month and there's still nothing there. So
Yeah, I mean, if you want to throw up caution tape, fine.
you
If
think?
if
Yeah,
we're gonna,
that's good for now.
yeah,
I mean, it worked. I mean, I know when we were down there, and you get that caution tape across there, then
At least it catches your attention. So you say, wait a minute, I better be careful, you know?
Yep.
So,
all right. So,
all right. How about we'll go do that tomorrow, right, Rick?
all right, Rick.
I don't hear anything. I don't hear
I
anything.
have some rather basic questions about this bridge.
Yeah.
Who owns it?
The silence is golden. This was probably put in, Todd, prior to some of the when things were less monitored, and it was likely put in by a snowmobile group
Hmm.
Uh-huh.
going up and down the trail, up through Sawyer's Field, et cetera, et cetera. And they probably did it without permission. That's my guess. It certainly wasn't put in.
They hauled in.
It was not put in by anybody associated with the Open Space Committee, like when Jassy was involved. Jassy didn't know that specifically either.
So DCR would deny any ownership of this bridge?
Absolutely, I would think.
it's there. It's
Uh,
there. They want to admit it or not.
Now, my understanding is that this bridge leads to a trail which leads to private property, correct?
That is correct.
So for the public to use this bridge, they would have to be headed on a trail that is basically a dead-end trail unless they wanted to go across somebody's land, correct?
That is correct. Although the person who owns the private property could and has given permission for a lot of people to access that trail from his property. So it is semi-dead end.
Uh-huh.
It is dead end from the ability to map it through the private property owner's field. it is mapped up to that field. But people, the public does, people do access it through that field. So I
Without
mean,
any
it's sort of
problem.
a moot point. I mean, whether you go up to a dead end and turn around and come back, because you don't mind doing a redundant walk, then that's okay. The
Well,
point is, it is a bridge over a trail that is on our maps.
yeah.
That's
I'm
all you need to
wondering-
know.
You remember that bridge to an island in Alaska, the bridge to nowhere? I'm a little concerned this could become one of those projects.
Any other discussion on this? All right, so Bob will put together a more detailed version, pick out a specific FRP product, and then I'll do up some more sketches and put that into a PowerPoint so it's suitable for DCR as well as anybody else. All right, let's.
And Mark, you're gonna be talking to DCR then, Mark, or Bob is, or who?
Both.
Yeah, I've kind of been the point man on contact with Tim Culkeen. I last talked to him on Friday, and he's trying to set up a site walk day to go take a look at it.
Ah,
And to put it in perspective a little bit more, and a slight digression, but definitely related. Mark and I had an appointment with him last week sometime, but Tim's state phone or whatever was malfunctioning, so he missed a date that he had agreed to make. But we're going to look at the bridge and the culvert, the stone culvert, at the same time.
that makes sense.
All right. Let's go back to the agenda. Agenda. Okay, so that takes care of that. The Mill Pond reroute, I just would like to take that off the list and put it as something for potential future, maybe a year or two down the road, unless somebody, I mean, I like that upper section, but we're already going to agree to do the kiosk and the map the way it is. Any other comments associated with that reroute?
I'll just throw one out there. I just want to make sure that people understand that when we talk about a reroute, it's a replacement for the existing trail. It's not in addition to the existing trail.
Okay, yep.
I know that staff had mentioned that she really liked the, sort of the view coming up out of the woods there where you first hit the view of the big stone wall.
Yep.
On the existing trail.
Yep.
And when we do talk about reroutes, we got to close down the existing trail if we do it.
Okay. Any other comments? No. Park grant, I'm going to close that loop on finalizing that open space with Ryan tomorrow. That should be a simplistic process. I'll admit my delinquency on this. But I know other people looked at it, so I've been interesting to hear comments on what they found when they looked at what was put out for that park grant. Who looked at it?
I read it. I thought it was a pretty nice effort by Ryan. I'm assuming that Ryan did most of that work, maybe with some input from Sanda. But it was a pretty good grant application.
Good. Any other comments on that park grant?
What did they ask for? How much? Do we know? Because they already have 50,000 out of, community preservation.
Yeah, I think it's, if I remember, it's been a couple weeks since I looked at it.
Yeah.
If I remember right, it's a $200,000 project, and the grant amount was like for 140 or
That would be, then
something.
that would get,
Okay.
that would get the 200,000. That was her mark. So, which still seems a lot for a playground, but whatever. Maybe I'm went out of it, but great. So he actually came through on that. So good for Ryan, right?
Ryan's a good guy. Ryan is a #1 in my book.
All right. So that's good news because I was worried about that.
All right, moving on. Just the webinar topic, and I could have put a couple details on here. Todd, Steph, and I attended the, what was it?
Saving the forests.
What was it called, Todd?
I don't remember the title exactly. It had to do with CO2 sequestration by forests, forest conservation.
Well, whatever. It doesn't make any difference. That was your boss, you said, Mark?
Yeah, I worked with and for Ralph for many years.
The presentation was outstanding, literally outstanding, and I did send around a little brief summary email to everybody on that. We are going to really be looking for and get back to them if we don't get it sent to us, both the PowerPoint presentation as well as the recording of the webinar. But he did an outstanding job, and the interesting topics, things came up in that. In all of it, it is totally about carbon sequestration in using our forests. And like a lot of the cutting just in our neighborhood, right around Root Road, I mean, DeVito, Ortolino, Peters, etc., have all done significant tree harvesting, and there's more tree harvesting tentatively happening on more of DeVico's land on the east side of Root Road, because I know there's a lot of trees marked, and I've seen the forester, whoever's in charge of marking, his vehicle parked right near the Ray Sawyer's fields over here. The speaker was clearly, he's not anti forestry, cutting, etc., but he certainly doesn't support it from an ecological viewpoint to help the environmental crisis that we're in. And the charts in it, one of the major things that I saw about it, and I put it in the email that I sent out to everybody. When we go to people like Concom, I see two things that would help us provide succinct comments to people. One is the technical information associated with why we need to protect our forests. Two is the economical aspects to it. And the technical information, what was his name, Mark?
Ralph Baker.
What Ralph provided in that from a technical viewpoint, he had, if you could steal out of that just 4 or 5 of the top charts in there that you could provide to an audience to provide some really significant technical information to put some meat behind the statements. You know, if you just go into a meeting and say that it's really important environmentally to maintain our forests, that doesn't carry a whole lot. But if you've got just at least some preliminary information that you can put in front of people, and the presentation that he made was just loaded with just significant technical information that he did have support for. There was a forester in that meeting. She happened to be a woman. That's pretty good, Bob. And you would have thought you would have got fight back from her. She didn't. She bought into what he was saying totally and really loved the detail that he had. And he had another significant point, or actually somebody else brought it up, that you ought to be able to get Chapter 61 credits, not for cutting your trees, but for carbon sequestration. And rightly so. I mean, the information that he presented was certainly convincing relative to the crisis that the world is in. And towns like, I'm preaching to the choir at this, and I'll do that for another second, and I'll stop. But the towns like Hubbardston, yeah, we got a lot of forests, but there's a lot of places that don't have what we have. And so somebody's got to make up for places where there's deficiencies. And so between that technical information and getting some financial support to go along with it, that it's actually financially beneficial to save our forests, are two things that we need, like for both town meetings and or Concom meetings, etc. So I'll stop my preaching. It was outstanding. That's my summary. Todd, you got anything to add to that?
No, it's very good. I thought the most memorable statement that he made was that unmanaged forests sequester more carbon than managed forests, which I think is counter to some of the conventional wisdom of forestry, that if you keep a forest thin and rapidly growing, that the trees will consume more CO2. That may be true per tree, but maybe not per hectare. So I was struck by that finding, which I had not heard before.
Well, he also had that if you're referring to his old forest growths, stands are more beneficial per acre than primary or secondary growth forests. So let's see, there was one other point. Let's see, that just dropped in and out of my head. Oh, yeah. I specifically, he ironically, I didn't remember him. He went to the Keystone Project when I did in 2017. And that was, I don't think they've had one since then, but I brought up that his approach on controlled cuttings was contrary to what Paul Canestraro, whatever, Paul C. From UMass. We went on when we were at the Keystone Project, we went to at least 3 or 4 places where they were doing controlled cuttings, and they were well done, and really a lot of thought put into what they were doing for cutting. But his mentality, if you're going to do things for the environment and for carbon sequestration, don't touch them. And that's the lines of what Todd was talking about. And he's also questioning, we visited another site as part of that Keystone thing. And that was a Barrens area that Fish and Wildlife had cleared in Hardwick, right along the Muddy River. And they had cleared, I don't know, 400 or 500 acres. And so we toured that. In fact, I walked with John, head of Fish and Wildlife, or he was anyway. I forget what his last name was. The comment was that he questions the validity of those kinds of cuttings to accomplish what they're intended. But at any rate, I won't get into any more details or stuff that's kind of argumentative or something. But it was clear that, and my point was, Paul from UMass, he is absolutely an environmentalist type person, but there was a clear dichotomy between what was presented at the webinar and what was presented at Keystone. And my question to him, if we're going to do things on a unified front by highly technical, knowledgeable people like himself and like Paul, they need to be on the same page. And his only justification for Paul's position, because he really likes Paul too, he knows Paul is a friend, is that Paul is a forester. And he comes from a background that supports that. And I question that a little bit, only in that Paul's also an extremely bright person. And if he can see the writing on the wall relative to the crisis, the environmental crisis that we're about to face, I would think he would change his tune to a significant extent as far as how many controlled cuttings that we do. But anyway, it was an outstanding webinar. And per Mark's comment, when we find things of this quality that have that much meat that we can directly lift to support cases that we might want to do in the future, like the Smith property on the other side of town, that we need to have that at our fingertips. And so we're going to keep watching to see when that gets published. And as soon as it does, we're going to make sure that we have access to the PowerPoint file and the video file so that we can put it on our website to preserve it.
Yes, Bob, along those lines, just a heads up, it usually takes them 2 or 3 weeks to get everything out, get the stuff out to people. So don't hold your breath waiting for it tomorrow.
No, the main thing is to keep an eye out so we don't lose it. I mean, that to give a little sense of the quality, there were, I don't know, I don't remember the exact number, somewhere between 40 and 60 people that attended this thing, and it ran over the time limit. And this Joy Rio, who is really good in her own right, said, okay, we're gonna close the meeting, but if people want to linger on for another 10 or 15 minutes or something, then we'll do so. So a few people dropped off, but I'd say probably 80 to 85% of the people that attended that meeting stuck on for the entire duration. So it was well done. And there were people there from around the United States, and I don't know if it was beyond that, but there was an extremely good audience for that. Let's see. I'll just go on to these, and I don't think I put these up here yet, but I will, and I'll show my screen in a second because I have to switch screens. Some of these things have just a dynamic screen, so no matter what I do, it gets shown up here, which could be a little risky, I guess. All right, Susan, that's enough. Let's see, accessible trail info. Let me go back over here. Let's go up here, new share. And I want to share my folder. Okay, these were the documents that I had found. ADA says basically 0 relative to trails themselves, only as it relates to structures that are at the beginning of trails. ADA, that is. Then there's this Architectural Barriers Act, which has quite a bit of detail on grades and pitches and elevations and discontinuities and all that good stuff. And then there are other standards associated with that. And the best I can see, like the Forest Service, that leverages back onto this ABA Act or whatever, because the wording that I found Cohen and FDA, I'll put these things up on our website just so we get those captured. So this Architectural Barriers Act does have specifics on guidelines for trail construction. So I didn't want to talk about that much, but that's the technical information. I'll put that up on our website.
Some of it's already there, Bob. Just add in what's not there already.
Yeah, the Forest Service stuff is there, isn't it?
Okay, yeah, some of that, yeah, I won't double up on what's there. Okay, let's go back to screen. We'll share, go back to the agenda. Benches, I don't want to belabor that. If the Mark had some ideas, and the did I send around the PowerPoint with a few sketches? I think I did the last time, right?
I didn't see that.
I didn't see it.
All right, and I'll call it up because I should be able to find that in an hour or two. Let's see here. Open space.
Don't leave now, Mark.
Documents. I should have had that open. Easy now. Trails community trail stuff. Here we go. All right, I'm opening it. Let me share a different screen. Okay, just relative to types of benches.
Yeah.
I have significant issues with and I know this not uncommon, and I've published that relative to the stuff that is out there. You know, mixing wood and concrete is there's two things about those bridges. The wood and concrete equal rot. The second aspect is the failure mechanism. The failure mechanism for the type of bench that's out there is a tip over. So once that wood post starts to rot, if somebody steps on it, sits on it, and they sit down with any kind of impetus, it could go right straight over backwards. And obviously that's not a good thing. These types of benches, and Todd had some of these, they're all predicated. I think every single one that I did is predicated on some sort of, and this is a really simplistic one it's up here, but they're all predicated on the same principle that there is contact with the wood, things can rot, but the failure mechanism on every single one of these types things, and some of them are much fancier than others, but they're pretty cool. But every single one does not have a tip over failure mechanism. You know, the base wood may rot and it may settle, and you may want to just repair part of it or whatnot. So just relative to moving forward, and we end up replacing these things. And you know, I'm part of NQT, and I'm trying to get them to change their techniques. And I've been in some pretty bitter things with Bobby Curley, and I don't mind. You know, I have no problem arguing with that guy about some of the stuff he does. And I'm getting a lot of support from other people within that organization. But the thing I like about all these types of benches is, they're simple, and they don't have a dangerous failure mechanism. So I don't know if anybody has any other comments on that. But if we go in and we do some replacement, these are the kind of things that I'm looking at for what we want to do down the future for any. I like the idea of benches. They're a great spot, particularly on trails where people have a few infirmities and give us people a place to rest. That's a fantastic idea. You just want to do it in a safe manner. That's the only reason I even brought that up to begin with. So, and I don't consider what we've got out there a safe solution. So, any other comments?
Oh, so the question is then, should we get rid of that one that's out there and replace it?
Yeah, I don't think it's a yes. In my opinion, yes. The other aspect I've done after digging into these kinds of things, there's a thing out there called trails immunity from prosecution. There's another word for that, and I did publish it. When you put up a structure, regardless of what it is, or you create a trail. Some of you were involved in some of these things about Bobby and his stubs. If you cut a trail, and you're supposed to be an expert in cutting a trail, and you leave stubs, and somebody falls and impales himself on it, that's your fault. You are liable. There is no trail immunity from everything. I did some research, and it follows the criminal guideline, and that was a change, I think, back in about 2010, relative to this immunity for trails, for public trails. If you do something delinquent, and you're supposed to be good at it, leaving stubs or designing and installing a bench or any kind of a structure, a bridge, whatever, if you do something, if it's a natural trail and somebody trips over a rock, immunity applies. If you cut a trail and you cut it improperly and leave something dangerous behind, if you install a bench, if you install a bridge that is obviously defective and somebody gets hurt on it, people can get sued, and rightly so. That's what I have found, and I guess that's what precipitated doing a little bit further research and publication on this. And we definitely should. As far as I know, those are not starting to rot yet, but we should do something probably in a year or so. And it doesn't hurt to do it sooner than later, but it's not an emergency now, but it probably should get something onto our projects list. So if you wanted to put it on our projects list, Rick, you could do that. That's my opinion on benches. And I won't belabor that anymore unless anybody else want to say something.
No, I'll put it on the list because I agree with you. Maybe when we get around to doing something about the other muddy areas on that trail, that's the time to take a chainsaw over there, and if we've got the tractor over there, dig up the concrete and get rid of it.
Yeah, that's concrete and wood. I'll stop. Benches. Any other new business that people have got?
Oh, let's talk about the fire pit, maybe, that Todd discovered and Mark dismantled.
Yes,
Hey,
nice job.
Nice job
Yes.
dismantling it, Mark. I mean, yeah.
It occurred to me that there is no signage that forbids fires in that area. That's probably the most damaging thing that could happen out there.
I never pay attention, but the sign at the entrance to Malone doesn't say anything about that.
Yeah, I don't think so.
I haven't seen anything.
Is there at Mount Jeff?
It might be part of that.
Well, it's going to be on the new kiosk.
Yeah, but that's at Mount Jeff, so.
Well, here's a thought. so it gets captured. I don't know where we're gonna end up posting some of those great graphics that Mark has got. Could that somewhere be put on that graphic? Well, I don't want to confuse it too much. Or should we just put up a separate signing? And I know this is a run-on paragraph, but are we going to do a kiosk over at Malone where we could put something like that? Is that on our projects list?
Not right now.
I'm including that in a trails grant application that I'm starting on.
Oh, good. Sounds great. That's a great idea. You know, so back to the no fires. I mean, somehow, somewhere, I don't think we want to put up signs.
It almost gives people
But
ideas.
I do think it, except maybe I'm contradicting myself, but it should be posted somewhere like at the kiosk that there's no fires permitted out there. Yes, no?
Sure.
Well,
Yes.
as it stands, you could accost someone and tell them there are no fires allowed here. How was that supposed to know? So you do have to do something, it seems to me.
Well, this grant application that I'm putting together wouldn't come about until like this time next year.
Right.
Mhm, mhm.
In the meantime, we could put up a cheap sign
Yeah.
if we wanted to with the prohibitions and such at Malone.
Yeah, I think we should be doing that.
What do you think as far as an implementation on that, Mark? Maybe a post, or I'm trying to picture the mailbox that's there. Obviously, that's where the maps are. Maybe something very close to that. Maybe put a post in the ground.
Yeah, we could do that.
Yeah, $12 post and a tin sign. You know, that'll last a year.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be extravagant. And I mean, there are other prohibitions we would put on it, not just no fires, but.
Yeah, I'll review the CR and send a draft around of what we might want to say.
All right.
And then we can just order a sign. You know, it won't be expensive. You know,
I
20,
wouldn't.
20, 30, 40 bucks, something like that.
Yeah, maybe we could do that at the same time you're getting that your other thing done, if it's the same company.
Well, I won't hold off since we're going to need to do our review cycle. But
how about making two of those? Is maybe somebody could check up at Mount Jeff. I mean, there should be one up there, obviously. Too.
there is one in Mount Jeff.
There is one. Okay.
I just can't remember if it specifically mentions fires.
Okay. All right. Any other new business?
The trailer has been moved. The trailer up at Mount Jeff is now parallel with the house down at the bottom.
Oh yeah, we didn't talk about the trailer. That
Yeah, so I was just out at Malone and I noticed someone had moved the trailer. So I don't know, will that make them annoyed? What are their name? Ann and he used to be on the open space. What's his name?
Joe.
Joe Cataldo.
I think it was done in conjunction with that because Lance knows Joe
Okay.
to some
so-
extent.
yeah.
Because Lance has been doing this for years, so
Right.
he knows. So he knows Joe, and there's been the best back and forth on this. I think Mark had the best idea. Relative to adding something, etc. We already have something in there relative to ugly things. Let's put it that way, like round hay bales wrapped in white plastic or something. We have what, a 7-day limit or something, Mark? Is that what it was?
Yeah.
Right?
I can talk to Lance, and I understand per the emails that have been going around the rationale. From there to Lance's property is a few miles, and hauling well, roughly a little over 100 bales and a hay trailer, that's quite a bit of hauling, takes quite a bit of time, as well as it gets some protection in. But at the same time, he knows when he's going to bail. He doesn't need to have it there way ahead of time. And so it can stay on his property till like a day before he's going to bail or something. And then he can bring it up. And I've had a number of conversations with Lance. So if it's amenable, my message to Lance would be, we understand the rationale, and you got to make some money, and it obviously saves time and money. And that's how he stores them too, by the way. He doesn't have a big hay barn. And so he does have a number of tractor trailers on his property, or trailers on his property. So this saves him, when he loads it into that off his hay wagons, that's where it stays. So he doesn't have to reload it at home. But at the same time, those probably hold they hold maybe a field's cuttings worth, to put it in perspective. So that it doesn't take cutting all the fields to fill up one of those trailers. They get filled up relatively fast. So I'll talk to him about just keeping his trailers there for 7 days or less, if that works for people. All set with that? Does that sound okay?
Well, actually, it's still noticeable, but at least it's not as,
Right smack in the
Yeah.
middle of,
yeah, you're driving up there and it's just like, what, so.
Yeah, I don't want to do it tonight, but let's put it on the agenda for either September or October meeting, just to do a review of what, the performance on the hay contract.
That's a good idea.
that is a good idea.
We'll be making so much money, we won't know what to do with it. Yeah.
Any other new business items? No? All right, motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
All in favor? Aye.
Yes.
I'll do
Do
it
we-
the reverse, like I said. Do I hear any nays?
Well,
In
until,
the absence of any nays, then I will declare the meeting closed.
except we need to set the next meeting, don't we?
Yep, and that happens actually. I've been doing a little bit on Robert's Rules of Order. That
August
happens
25,
right now, actually. Let's see.
because technically this is July's meeting. And so
Yeah.
August 25 is the last Tuesday.
So the 25th, that'd be 1, 2, that's 3 weeks. People want to have one on the 25th?
Well, the sign might be done by then, right, Mark?
I don't know if it's going to be all by then, but it'll be in Hubbardston somewhere.
Well, do you guys want to wait and just do one in September then? Is that what
I
I'm
would
thinking
say
here?
I would
Is
say
that better?
What'd you say, Mark?
I would say wait for September.
So
Uh,
what's September's date? Does anybody have the calendar handy?
I do. So if we do a September date on the regular September date, that would move it out to September 29th. Is that what I hear, that people want to entertain a September 29th date? That's the last Tuesday of September.
Sure.
This doesn't require a vote, but I have heard no objections to the September 29th. So I will set our next meeting for September 29th.
All righty.
All
Is
right.
there any action to install those signs that just got circulated this evening?
Okay, searching for action on the App Store.
Sorry,
Well, you were asking about the,
Siri just jumped in here.
New posts.
Yeah,
Yes, I'm hopefully get over there within the next week and get them, get the holes dug. So, oh, that,
Oh, the signs that Rick is working on.
yeah.
They look fantastic. They
does
you
look
need
anybody
great.
have, does
you need
anybody
help?
have a motorized auger? I have one for my tractor, but I'm not gonna drive my tractor over there. I got a post hole shovel, so that's
No.
what I use, but
Yeah. When you want to do that, I've got a phenomenal auger for that. If you want to.
you're gonna take your tractor all the way over there just for that?
Well, I actually, I'm doing some work, or going to be doing some work on Flag Road for, at any rate, I'm doing some work on Flag Road. So it's not very far from Flag Road to go over there. So how about you and I get together and because it would certainly simplify it. I have something called a wobble auger.
Yeah, and you showed me that. Yeah, that'd be great. I mean, I don't want to drive my tractor all the way over there just to
Yeah.
use an auger. I mean, I can use a post hole digger, so.
Oh, Rick, jump at the chance. Thank you,
Oh,
Bob.
no,
Yes, take it.
I'd like to get them in fairly soon though.
All right. Well, I do have to get over there soon, so I'll be setting up something to get over there in the next week or so.
Okay,
All right.
Okay.
very
Very
good.
good.
Thanks, Bob.
All righty.